Hello dear students of class 10th, welcome to English class. I hope all of you are fit and healthy. Students, in this video, I shall be explaining you the 7th poem from your first flight book, that is Fog by Carl Sandburg. Students, before I explain you this beautiful poem, let me give you a brief introduction about the poet, that is Carl Sandburg. So, as you can see the picture, he is Mr. Carl Sandburg, and let me tell you that the full name of the poet is Carl August Sandburg. He was born on 6th January 1878 in Galesburg, USA, and unfortunately he bid farewell to this world in the year 1967. Alright. Now students, Mr. Sandburg, he was an American poet. Okay, he was an American poet, journalist, biographer as well as an editor. Okay, he really contributed a lot in the field of poetry. His poems were really awesome. And you know, for his poems, he got Pulitzer Prize, and that also 3 times. So, thrice he won the Pulitzer Prize. Let me tell you that Pulitzer Prize is given in the field of poetry. When a poet composes an excellent work, when a poet makes an excellent composition, then this prize is awarded to the poet. Okay? And let me tell you about some famous works of Mr. Sandburg. So, some of his famous works are Chicago, Grass, Fog, etc. And today we are going to read about his one of the excellent compositions, that is Fog. Now students, let's come to the poem. See, let me tell you that this is a very small poem, a poem of merely 6 lines, very small lines. Okay, so this is a very small yet a beautiful composition by Mr. Carl Sandburg. Now students, before I explain you the content, before I explain you the theme of this poem, what is the meaning of fog? You must have observed this. Everybody must have observed this. What is fog? See, fog is a thick cloud of tiny water droplets that is suspended in the atmosphere, and that makes our visibility, or that restricts our visibility. Whenever fog is there, we are not able to see clearly. We are not able to see the things that are at a distance clearly, right? It causes a blur vision. Everything looks blur, or everything looks hazy. And this fog, this is often seen in the winters. In the winter season, fog is visible, it appears, right? And if I talk about December or January, then during this time, December and January, usually fog appears, and it really becomes very difficult for the people to see the things that are at a distance. Alright. So, I explained you about fog, that how fog appears, when it is there, in which season fog is visible. Now students, coming to the poem, see, as I told you that it is a very small poem, a very small composition. So students, in this composition, in this poem, Mr. Sandburg, he has very beautifully described the arrival of fog, that how the fog arrives in the city and the harbour. Now what is harbour? Harbour means where the ships and the boats are parked, that you call dockyard, alright, or dock or dockyard, that is called as harbour. So the poet has very beautifully described the arrival of fog, how fog has arrived into the city as well as in the harbour, around the harbour, how the fog sees everything in the city, how the fog very silently, very peacefully notices everything that is there in the city. Also, let me tell you one thing, very interesting thing, that in this poem, the poet has compared fog with that of a cat. Now, you must be thinking, how is that possible? how fog can be compared with a cat? Is there any similarity? No. See, literally it has no similarities. But when it comes to literature, when it comes to poetry, then everything is possible. Comparisons can be made. I think you must have studied about metaphor when we compare something with any animal or something. So that comparison, figure of speech, you must have studied about figures of speech. So in English, everything is possible when it comes to poetry, when it comes to literature, right? So in this poem, Mr. Sandberg, he has compared fog in a very beautiful manner with that of a cat. That regarding the movement of fog, regarding the arrival of fog with the arrival of cat. How cat arrives and how fog arrives. Now see, let me tell you that how they are related. How a cat arrives? A cat arrives very slowly with soft paws and everything. When a cat is coming, can you hear the movement of cat? Is it audible? No, it is not audible, because very softly, very quietly the cat enters your place, and the cat drinks milk, whatever the cat wants, she drinks, she has very peacefully, and then she goes away, she disappears. So similarly, the fog also comes very silently, very quietly, without disturbing others, without being noticed, and the fog watches everybody, sees everything, and then silently it disappears. So this way Mr. Sandberg has compared fog with cat. Alright. Students, in this poem, the poet has expressed his appreciation for the nature, the way he appreciates, the way he very carefully sees even the small events that are happening in the nature. See, to anybody else, a passing fog may seem like an ordinary event. Definitely, it is not a very great event or very big event. But for the poet, it holds significance, it holds importance. And that is why the poet has composed a poem on this, that is fog. That this shows the love of, this shows the poet's love for nature, the way he appreciates nature, the way he gives importance to nature, and how close the poet is with the nature. So this shows the bond between the poet and the nature. Alright. So students, I hope the introduction part of this poet is, I'm saying again. So students, I hope the introduction part of this poem is clear to everybody. Now I shall be moving to the only one stanza that is there in the poem. So as you can see here, the poem is mentioned here on the screen. The poem only of 6 lines. So first I'll recite the poem and then I'll give you the explanation of this poem. So the poem starts. The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over the harbour and city on silent haunches and then moves on. Only this much. So small poem, right? So now let's start with the explanation. Now let me explain you about the lines. See, the poem starts with the arrival of fog. The fog comes on little cat feet. So the first 2 lines are indicating the arrival of fog, that how fog has arrived, how fog has entered into the city and into the harbour. See, and here in the first 2 lines only, the poet has compared fog with cats. See, cats are often associated with quiet and graceful movements. The cats enter, whenever they enter any place, they enter very silently, very quietly. They often come with soft paws without giving an indication, without giving a sign of their arrival. So similarly, fog has also entered into the city very silently, without giving any indication, without giving any sign of its arrival. So that is why the poet has compared fog with cat. Exactly, actually, literally, they are not related or not associated. But as I told you, that in literature, in poetry, everything is possible, right? So, so here the poet has compared the characteristics of fog with cat, because according to the poet, the characteristics of cat as well as the characteristics of fog are almost similar. The way of their arrival is almost similar. They arrive very quietly, their movements are very much agile, they are very much soft, right? So the poet has specifically mentioned that how the fog enters, how the fog comes on little cat feet. Like means as the cat has small feet, similarly fog is also having small feet, and very slowly, very quietly, in an agile manner, it enters into the city. So I hope the first two lines of this poem are clear to everybody. Now let's proceed. So, it sits looking over harbour and city on silent haunches. Now, as the fog has entered into the city, as the fog has arrived slowly on its little cat feet. So, I'm saying again. So now students, let's move to the next lines of the poem. So the next lines are, it sits looking over harbour and city on silent haunches. So in the first two lines, the poet has described the arrival of fog. Now in the next lines, the poet is describing that what the fog does after coming, after the arrival, what is the work of fog. So the poet describes that how the fog sits looking over the city and the harbour. See, when fog forms over a location, then it often lingers over that area. Whenever fog is there, it is not stagnant. It just moves here to there, from one place to another, right? Similarly, the cat also does the same thing. Whenever a cat arrives in any home or something, then the cat generally notices the things that are here and there. It sees that what is happening. It notices everything, whatever is happening around. So similarly, the fog also does the same thing. It lingers here and there. It sees everything. And how it sees everything? How it sees the city and the harbour? It sees by sitting on silent haunches. Now, what is the meaning of haunches? Haunches means the back portion, means sitting by bending the knees. So that position is called as sitting on haunches. See, as you can see in the picture, how the cat sits. So this is the position, means when the knees are bent. So this posture, this position is called as sitting on haunches. So similarly, the poet compares the posture of cat with that of fog. The poet says that as the cat sits, similarly the fog is also sitting, and it is just looking everything around, what is happening over the city, what is happening in the harbour. So what all activities are happening in the city, everything is being noticed by the fog. So I hope these three lines are also clear to everybody. Now students, let's proceed to the last line, that is, and then moves on. And then after seeing everything, after noticing everything, after seeing that what is happening, the fog moves on. That means the fog disappears. So in the last line, the poet says that after carefully watching everything, the fog very silently passes. It very silently passes through a location, means very quietly, in a graceful manner, like a cat, it disappears without giving an indication to anybody, without disturbing others, without alarming others. It moves on. So this is the poem all about. So I hope that all the 6 lines are actually understood by everybody. So students, now let me just summarize this poem. So students, in this poem, Carl Sandburg's interest in nature has been reflected. How much he is related, how much he is associated with nature. His love for nature has been reflected by this poem. So this poem beautifully captures the moment when the fog comes and moves. How the fog arrives into the city and the harbor very quietly, very silently. It sees everything, it notices everything. It notices the city, the harbor, and everything that is present around, like that of a cat. The poet has beautifully compared fog with cat, because the qualities of cat and fog, according to the poet, are almost the same. As the cat enters any house silently, similarly the fog also enters the city very quietly. The way the cat sits and the cat notices everything, similarly the fog also sits, the fog also lingers and watches everything. And the way the cat disappears, the way the cat moves on, similarly the fog also moves, or fog also disappears. The unpredictable departure of fog is mentioned in this poem. So I hope the poem is clear to everybody. Now students, let me talk about the figures of speech that are used in this poem. So first of all, metaphor is used. What is metaphor? When a thing or an object is compared with another unrelated things or object, by showing that they are similar, by showing similar characteristics, that refers to metaphor. Alright. And if I talk about the rhyme scheme of this poem, then let me tell you students that this poem does not have any rhyme scheme. And a poem that is not having any rhyme scheme is called a free verse. What it is called? It is called as a free verse. See, as you can see, the lines, the last lines, they are not at all rhyming with each other. None of the lines are rhyming. So in that case, that type of poem is called as a free verse. Alright. So I hope that the poem is clear to everybody. I have given you the complete explanation of this poem. And students, in the next video, I shall be discussing the question answers of this poem. Till then, thank you so much. Stay safe and stay connected. I'll see you in the next video.